easy. And much of the time it is. But it can also be very difficult to accomplish completely. Today we will talk about a number of ways forgiveness can express itself in our lives, and even how the need for forgiveness can hide so that we don't realize forgiveness is still necessary until years later. That happened to me, and I will tell you about it in a few minutes. The word forgive is the combination of the words give and for. When I ask myself what I would be willing to give for peace of mind, I have a new understanding of what it means to forgive. I give up attachment to pain and anger in order for me to enjoy a better life. I give up judgment or criticism of my own past actions for the freedom to live in loving ways. And that was from Unity Daily Word magazine, April 18th, 2012. I give love. I send love to the person who offended me, and I send love to myself. I send love, and I forgive that person. I do this several times a day until I can truly accept that and feel a sense of peace. Sometimes the injury was so grave that forgiveness cannot be done this way. More on that later on. Myrtle Fillmore was so sick that doctors did not think she would live much longer. That is written about in the book, The Story of Unity, by James Dillett Freeman. Quote, I have made what seems to me a discovery. I was fearfully sick. I had all the ills of mind and body that I could bear. Medicine and doctors ceased to give me relief, and I was in despair when I found practical Christianity. I took it up, and I was healed. I went to all the life centers in my body and spoke words of truth to them, words of strength and power. I asked their forgiveness for the foolish, ignorant course that I had pursued in the past when I had condemned them and called them weak, inefficient, and diseased. I let a little prayer go up every hour to help me to think and speak only kind, loving, true words. End of quote. In 2 years, Myrtle Fillmore was no longer an invalid. Through her prayers, she was made absolutely whole, and she lived more than 40 years longer. Healthy the whole time. Mary Sigmund wrote a remembrance in Unity magazine that went as follows, and I quote, about 3 years ago, I was in the hospital for surgery. I was required to stay for several days after the operation. When I began to feel better, I got bored. My daughter visited me every day, so I asked her to bring me a new address book. My old address book was full of names and addresses that had been crossed off and rewritten due to moves or changes in marital status. It was a mess. So I decided it was a perfect time to transcribe every name and address neatly and correctly into my brand new book. It occurred to me that this was an opportunity to advance my healing through forgiveness. As I rewrote the new information into my book, I reflected on my past and present relationships with each person, and I did a forgiveness exercise. I forgave myself for any perceived wrong or failure to love that may have occurred on my part, and in turn, forgave them for any perceived wrongdoing on their part. What a release! I was well and out of the hospital in record time. And I haven't been back or had a recurrence of that illness since. Now, every time I use that address book and look at the name of one of my dear friends or relatives, I say a forgiveness affirmation and feel a new peace in my heart. End of quote. What a wonderful story. I have a very good friend who now lives in Colorado, but lived in Springfield many years ago. She's a very skilled psychotherapist, and she uses a version of the story that Mary just told us. She uses this method herself and recommends it to clients who feel the need to forgive. She says, I forgive Josephine, or whatever the name. I forgive Josephine for her mistakes and the results of those mistakes. And I also forgive myself for the mistakes I made and the results of those mistakes. Excuse me. She believes our brains need to be rewired from time to time. And this is a good way to do it instead of brooding over it. This affirmation can be repeated several times each time we think of the person. Now, let's dispense with a common belief about forgiveness. Many people are concerned because they don't think God can forgive them for something they have done. Richard and Mary Alice Jafala addressed this concern in The Quest. Quote, God cannot forgive because God has not judged. God cannot see anything which needs forgiving. End of quote. God sees us simply as the divine beings we are. Jack Addington submitted a story to Monday Munchies, which is a site created by Unity minister Reverend David J. Siebert to help people like me who are preparing talks. Here is one of them. Quote, Albert Cliff tells the story of the healing power of love that I have never forgotten. I have passed it on to many people. Cliff said that a man crippled with arthritis came to visit him one day. Cliff asked him how this condition had begun and was told that the condition had first shown up about 6 years previous. At that time, he and his brother were partners, but they had a falling out. They parted in anger, and their families refused to speak to each other. It came out that the man had developed hate toward his brother, and as his hate grew, so did his illness. Now crippled, he wanted God to help him. Cliff told him he must practice complete forgiveness. Complete forgiveness of that wrong, even if it were true that his brother had robbed him, which was what he said. He must ask forgiveness of his brother. Together they prayed about this, and the man was able to forgive his brother. He dictated a letter to his brother on the spot and sent it by special messenger. At that point, Dr. Cliff said a surprising thing happened. The man arose to go and walked across the room, put his hat and coat on, and thanked Dr. Cliff. He had not realized that for the first time in years, he did not need his crutches. He never needed them again. Love had triumphed. Love, the healing power within each of us, can perform miracles when we unify with it. End of quote. Now to the times you simply cannot forgive, when the feelings are too deep. Then you must begin to examine your feelings. That is not easy for folks who have been brought up in families who didn't discuss feelings, but you can do it. Begin simply. What did you feel right afterward, or maybe a week and a half later? Was it hurt? Abandonment? Fear? What was it? Start with that. Say, I let go of hurt. I release whatever and I send what? Jesus told us we are to do what God wants us to do. In all cases, that would be something positive, loving, or just accepting the other person. You will not believe this at first, or possibly for quite a while, but keep on saying it, and say it several times. I can think of situations when even that would seem nearly impossible, but start off with that. You may sense the word that will describe things better after saying this for several days, and it may be several feelings, folks. If time goes by and you still cannot forgive the person, then please see a skilled psychotherapist. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and I seldom saw my father afterward. He was an alcoholic, and I am sure that was a part of the problem. When I was 9 years old, my father and my favorite uncle, Uncle Frank, came to get me to go visit other relatives in town. We had a very nice visit, although Uncle Frank was the only adult who did much talking when the three of us were alone. My father was totally quiet most of the time, except to talk a bit to relatives. Uncle Frank asked me about school, and I excitedly told him I really liked my fourth grade teacher, and I was getting really good grades now. Uncle Frank knew that had not always been the case. My ADHD expressed itself in inattentiveness, and I simply could not stay focused on my work. Uncle Frank was very glad to hear things were better with me. We went to Aunt Margaret's house and visited with her. She was always glad to see me, and we had a nice visit. When we got back home, my father said he would be back in 2 weeks, and Patricia, my younger sister, could go with us for the first time. My father had promised to come for visits many times, and he seldom did, so I was not convinced he would actually come. My sister, however, was really excited about the promised visit. and extremely disappointed when it did not happen. I had decided I really couldn't count on my father to come. And when he didn't again, I decided I was not going to plan on him really being a father to me. We children lived with Grandma and Grandpa, and our mother, of course, and Grandpa Henry was always there for me. From that point on, I decided I would not think of my father as part of the family. All my love was going to go to my grandpa. I truly thought I had accomplished my goal until I had an important insight as I was writing this talk. I realized that the hurt from the relationship with my father had never really been forgiven. That was, 9 from 86? It was a long time ago. I have belatedly begun forgiveness exercises. Father had 9 siblings, and I was only close to Uncle Frank and Aunt Margaret. Other aunts and uncles and even Dad's second wife reached out, hoping to have a relationship with me, but I never responded to them. Now they are all deceased. Now all I can do, besides the forgiveness exercise, is to never let this happen again in my life. Forgiveness is so important. As Maya Angelou said, forgiveness is the greatest gift you can give to yourself. Not forgiving hurts us. It can even hurt us physically to carry all that anger and upset around. So give love to the hurts, upsets, and even anger you experience. And you will receive peace. Wonderful, wonderful peace. Namaste. Let us take 1 or 2 deep breaths and then relax completely. Let concerns and worries simply drift away. This is your releasing, recharging time. In the center, in the center of my being is peace, deep spiritual peace. Wonderful peace. I go to this place in my inner being and feel the steady, sure, serene connection to Divine Spirit. I become calm. Peace is mine. Wonderful peace. Divine wisdom within me guides every step I take. Wisdom is the power of God which leads me to a right and perfect way to go. With wisdom shining on the path I need to take, all I need to do is follow its light. And as I focus on Divine Spirit within, wisdom increases. Divine Spirit is love. Love grows when we focus on it, and so we do. I bless everyone I meet, seeing only their divinity within. Throughout the day, I sow seeds of love wherever I am, and my heart center feels it. The love I send comes back to me magnified. When I affirm prosperity, it comes to me. Divine abundance flows to me and through me. And I am prosperous. Prosperous in all ways, in friendships, in nature expressing itself around me, in the beauty of the world, and in my family. My mind, centered in Divine Mind, overflows with prosperity. I feel rich and grateful as I pray. My life is a divine order, centered and serene. I know Divine Spirit guides me in the way I should go, always and forever. And now we go into the silence. The silence. As we close this time of meditation, we come back to this place of worship, rested and renewed. We feel the chair beneath us and the people sitting next to us. And our minds are peaceful. Amen. Dave, you want to play a little ending? And now, let us stand and sing page 14 in the Blue Songbooks, I Am the Radiant Life of God. Wow, do I love this one.